All right, everybody, good morning. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Traffic Advisory Committee meeting for the town of Wakefield for July 23rd, 2024. Just a reminder, if you could remain on mute unless you're asked to speak. If you are, if you could identify yourself by name and address. Also, if you could speak clearly, as it's being audio and video recorded, will be posted to the town's website and WCAT. Attendance, we have Bill Renault, Dan Benjamin,
Where?
Lois Benjamin, John Connors. Are you on, John? Yep, there's Joe. We have
Yep, I'm here.
Joe Conway. Morning, John. We have Matt Keeley and Steve Mayo, all present. Dan, if you'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Even though I'm in Canada.
I actually, I was just going to comment. I like the new Vets Field sign in the background.
I don't know what's in the background right now.
Dan, you gonna do a rendition of "O Canada" for us too, or no?
In French?
Yeah, we're gonna do like a hockey game, right? We'll get to hear that too.
All right, thanks, Dan. Item number 4 is public engagement. If any members of the public have anything for traffic advisory that isn't related to an agenda item, we'll give you time to speak on those agenda items that we have, 5 and 6. But if you have something for us, if you could raise your hand and I'll invite you to speak. We'll keep it to 3 minutes per comment. Anybody have any comments for traffic advisory not related to an agenda item today? Everybody's excited to get to our 2 agenda items, I assume. We have Kyla. If you could unmute, give us your name and address, please. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, Kyla McKay Smith, 40 Nahant Street. I apologize that I wasn't here to give comment when the proposed 40B development at 32 was on the agenda last month. I did just review that meeting information. And I did want to add that something I had mentioned before, I had emailed the Traffic Advisory Committee, was that on the traffic report, which showed the existing conditions, one of the things was that it showed that there was a sidewalk on both sides of Nahant Street all the way down. And I wanted to mention that specifically across the street from 32 and 36 Nahant Street, there is no sidewalk. It's only on the even side of the street. The sidewalk on the south side of Nahant Street stops east of number 31 at the driveway to 35A Nahant Street. And then it doesn't start again until basically where Franklin Street comes in. So if there is any construction on, around 32 or 36, it cannot block the sidewalk because there's literally nowhere else for people to walk. And then unrelated to that specifically, I have a big concern with the intersection of Main Street, North and Nahant. I'm sure that this has come up many times in the past, but particularly with the right turn lane going from North Ave south onto Main Street. Drivers go even faster when they have a red light than when they have a green. They don't even pause. Right turners are a constant danger to pedestrians. I walk my middle schooler during the school year and I stop and talk to the crossing guard. And there are so many times when we're like, oh, okay, 3 cars just ran the red light. Oh, we have the walk light and here's somebody turning from Nahant Street right onto Main Street. I have, raised my finger and said, excuse me, please stop. Gotten cursed out for that. So I would hope that there might be an option for no turn on red, one of those temporary signs that shows up when there is a walk signal. So those are some of my big concerns right now.
All right, Kyla, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anybody else for comments? All right, seeing none, we will move on to item number 5, updates on our Miriam Street traffic calming application. And I'm not sure if Danielle's with us. She has spearheaded this application. She's done quite
I
a bit.
am. I'm here. I'm just off camera. I have children running around behind me.
Danielle, yep, no, not a problem. So Danielle, we'll have our town engineer review the report that we received, and then we'll go through some of the criteria, whether it meets the criteria or not, which I think it does. And we'll go over what some of our options are. So Bill, if you want to take it away for us.
Sure, I'm just pulling up the document. So we had a consultant go out there and do test data collection on both streets in the neighborhood to determine additional volume as well as speeds. And I'm trying to pull it up. I'm not finding it. Thanks for putting me on the spot, Joe.
Not a problem. Anytime.
Appreciate that. If I'm gonna find this quickly.
I have it up, Bill, if you're looking for a number.
I just found it. Yep, I got it. So, so basically, I can share my screen if we would like to do that. Make it easy so everybody can see it. So can folks see, oh, is that the right screen? Can folks see the, that's not the right one. Sorry, folks, I apologize for the delay here. Some fumbling around. So can we see the speed study now?
Yes, we have it.
Yep.
Yep.
On letters to me? Okay. So basically, kind of looking essentially at the more the speed related items. Basically, the big one we want to look at is our 85th percentile speeds based on speed limits that are out there. And you can see that going north of Robert Street, we do have speeds in excess of 5 miles an hour. Typically, we look at 10 as our kind of our magic number to see if it's really an issue. Although we do see some sections where, you know, some of the speeds were recorded to be upwards of 43, 42 miles an hour, which I'm sure is what most of the folks are seeing out there as kind of that's what you folks are probably focusing on realistically. So we've identified a couple of options and recommendations from Ty and Bond on ways to look at improving. First one is kind of a first deployment would be the radar speed sign, so folks will know kind of what they're doing, posted with the actual speed limit for the area. So that's what I'm proposing at this point that we would move forward with. This would also collect additional data, so we'd see, you know, if this is working or if it's not. If that's not working after we, you know, look at it for a few months, we would look to move into a chicane configuration, which really what it does is kind of alternate and makes folks have to slalom through the straightaway. So we would kind of have little essentially bump outs in different sections that would be staggered that would require folks to go around them to slow them down. So that'll be more of a built condition. That's how we would look to correct the problem out here. So first step would be the speed sign, collect more data, see if this is working with the speed signs. If not, then we would look to deploy phase 2. So I would say let's look to move on the signs ASAP and plan to maybe discuss in 6 months or so once we get 6 months worth of data to see if that's making an improvement for us.
Great. So as far as the criteria goes, like Bill said, you know, typically between 8 and 10 miles an hour, according to our policy, is where the 85th percentile speed should be. But there's a couple of things here. I think it sees a volume of traffic because of the traffic that's trying to avoid the railroad crossing. So that's one issue that I think kind of ups the concern here. Another is it's such a narrow street. There's no sidewalks. It's not a pedestrian generator per se, but I know that it's a neighborhood where a lot of people do walk. So I'm concerned about that. But I will note that it's a 25 mile an hour speed limit there, and I think had this been a 30 mile an hour zone, this would have qualified. So I just want to kind of caution that you know, it's there's been some push in town to have every street 25 miles an hour, and this is kind of the example that I'm talking about, where we would have to be putting up some type of traffic calming effort on nearly every street in town. If we saw speeds that typically would be 3 or 4 miles an hour over the 30-mile-an-hour limit, but we now change it to 25. Now, I'm not saying that Merriam Street doesn't deserve a 25-mile-an-hour limit. I think it does. I think that's why back in the day it was a traffic study was done. It was voted on by then the Board of Selectmen, went to Mass DOT, and Mass DOT ultimately approved it. But you know, as far as making a blanket condition that every street in town be 25 miles an hour, I think we can see how it's a slippery slope for some streets to then they would qualify for traffic calming, and we'd be considering traffic calming efforts for nearly every street in town. Whereas this street in particular, I think, has, you know, a unique set of circumstances, especially, you know, there's no place for traffic to go on Forest Street. The gates get stuck frequently in town. It's just it's an issue that we've dealt with for decades with the railroad, and it causes traffic queuing. People don't like to sit in traffic, in which case they speed. So I think this is well suited for Merriam Street to be a what we call kind of like a phase one traffic calming you know, mitigation effort, and we'll see what happens with it. You know, from that point forward, if something more permanent needs to be installed. But you know, in town we have a speed trailer that goes out. It's deployed on kind of a more educational basis, depending on you know, requests and needs throughout the town. But that's temporary. We do have some of these signs that are more, you know, they're not easily deployable, but the DPW does a great job getting them out there and moving them around as needed. So those are kind of to hit areas in town where the speed trailer just would be taking up the whole sidewalk, or could be struck in the middle of the road, or just there's no good place to put it to get solar. So we have those smaller signs that we deploy and move around, but this would be a more permanent solution for the time being for Merriam Street. It wouldn't be moved. It would stay for you know, for the length of time that's determined by the policy. And then at that point, we would reassess. So I'll turn it over to Danielle.
So if I can just chime in quickly, so just to highlight again, so Robert Street, we also looked on Robert Street as well. Those are well within the speed limit currently, so we wouldn't be looking to deploy anything on Robert. It would just be on Merriam.
Right, and Robert Street, I don't even think meets the volume. Under 400 vehicles per day, 0 points are assigned to that per the policy. Where Merriam Street does see a bulk of the cut through traffic. They're at, according to the study, 1,500 daily volume, and our policy says anything over 1,000 to 2,000 is assigned 10 points. You know, no sidewalks assigns an additional 5 points, and then you know, depending on what 85th percentile you're looking at, if you look at you know, the 33.7 rounded up to 34, you're talking about, you know, roughly 9 miles an hour over. That brings it into the 10-point range. Again, because it is a 25-mile-an-hour zone there. It's a special speed regulation. So that would be a criteria that we would weigh whether we spend the 6,000 to 7,000 on these signs, which is roughly what they cost, against another street that might be competing for a similar traffic calming measure. But as it stands right now, this is the only active application that's progressed to the point of obtaining all the signatures and having a speed study done and being ready to move forward with a traffic calming measure. So I see no reason to hold this up and rank it against potential other applications. You know, it's a fairly low cost item, so I think it's something we should move forward on. But anything else from any members of traffic advisory before I turn it over to Danielle? All right, Danielle, what do you have for us?
I just wanted to thank you all for taking it into consideration and having such a very structured process to go through. I appreciate that, and I know everyone in our community is going to be really appreciative of this. The only other thing that I wanted to note is that there's no stop signs in our neighborhood. I don't know if that's normal, but not even at the end of Merriam Street going towards Forest.
At Forest Street or at Robert Street?
Forest.
Okay, yeah, we can.
Forest and Merriam, and there's just,
That makes sense. We can make that happen.
yeah, there's just very weird how there's no stop signs. Like people stop, but that was the last comment. And again, thank you. I appreciate it. Do you know time-wise when we would expect to see things start to move forward?
So typically, according to our policy, we'd have to now have you take this application with the estimated costs for this traffic calming solution, have everybody sign off on it, and that they want to move forward with it. But I think that, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's going to be more for a permanent solution. Like if we were going to install the chicanes or do something that's going to be a real big ticket item.
That's how I've always applied it. So I mean, I use this in my previous town too. So it's similar policy. We use it more for the construction components.
Yeah, because then there's not only a real cost, not that 6,000 or 7,000 isn't a real cost, but doing anything structural would be significant, and it would change the landscape of Merriam Street. So we'd want to make sure that everybody's on board with that before we go ahead and do it. So we'll get those ordered relatively soon. I'll talk to DPW Director Joe Conway and see what he can do to make that magic happen. And Joe's great, so we'll get that out as soon as we can. And as soon as I have a better timeline on availability and what Joe can get done for us, we'll get that done. I just want everyone to realize, like, the DPW is fantastic, but they have a budget every year that they have to work within, and these are kind of like, we may have 3 or 4 traffic calming applications per year, we may have none. So it's tough to really gauge on a budget end for Joe. What we're going to need for signage, what we're going to need for potential improvements for traffic calming. So with something like this, I think we'll be able to dip into some of our traffic mitigation funds or something like that. But Joe and I will talk offline. But he's always been very, very helpful with making it work with his budget. And it's finite. He goes into every year expecting certain things, and these are kind of those one-off that he really can't prepare for. So I just want to thank Joe for being helpful with that. We throw a lot of signage and line painting and kind of odds and ends at him that he's never really prepared for, and he always comes through for us. So we appreciate that. Any other comments from members of the public or traffic advisory on agenda item number 5?
Do we want to take a vote for the stop sign? Because that would have to be a regulatory sign, right? So they have to go to the select board, to the town council.
You know what? I think a motion on that would be great. Let's move that along, because I actually have a few. I've been trying to package the signs together now that town council has to vote on everything, regulatory and non-regulatory for signage. So I'm trying to get like 3 or 4 to present to them at a time and not take up too much of their time with one sign. So this would work out great.
Yeah, I'd imagine obviously the speed signs would be something that they would vote on too, right? I wouldn't see that being any different necessarily, right? Just so we know going forward how we're going to do that. That's all.
You know what? Maybe I'll talk with Mr. Mayo offline.
I'd have them vote on both.
Okay.
All right, so I'll make a motion to install new speed signs and a new stop sign on Merriam Street. Stop sign will be located at the intersection of Forest and Merriam.
Second.
All right. Voted and second on, all in favor.
Aye.
All right, unanimous on that. So we'll move that forward to town council to install a stop sign at the end of Merriam Street at Forest Street, and speed alert signs with the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit attached in both directions on Merriam Street. Thank you, and thank you, Danielle. We'll be in touch as soon as we have a little more information on the timeline.
Thank you.
All right, item number 6 is a continuation of a presentation for proposed residential development at 119 to 135 Nahant Street. And Attorney Pams, who do we have that would need to share their screen?
Scott Thornton from VAI.
Okay, hold on.
So for the record, my name is Jason Panos, practicing law at 246 Andover Street. I am joined by, as I mentioned, Scott Thornton of Vanessa and Associates and Scott Cameron from the Moore and Cameron Group. I apologize in advance. I'm getting over a pretty bad cough, and as I feel one coming on, I'll do my best to mute. just to bring you up to speed, we last met on May 10th. A number of comments were made by the TAC, and your subject matter expert, Matt Keeley, on June 24th, VAI, Vanessa and Associates, submitted responses to those comments along with auto turn templates for passenger vehicles, trash trucks, emergency fire apparatus, and delivery vehicles. We have also since submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals a full engineering package set. The only thing missing from that, and that is coming shortly, is a lighting plan to supplement the landscape plan. And Scott Cameron will be able to talk a little bit more about that as it impacts traffic and traffic circulation throughout the site. The Zoning Board of Appeals heard that, heard a presentation on that package on July 10th. And with that, through the chair, I'd like to invite Scott Thornton to begin his PowerPoint presentation.
Sure. Good morning, Scott. How you doing?
Good morning, Lieutenant Anderson. I'm fine. Thanks for asking. Can I share my screen?
I think you can. I made you co-host, whether it worked or not. We shall see. Perfect.
All right, great. Thanks for having us today. I have a few slides to go through to bring you up to speed on the information that was submitted last month, addressing comments that were made at the May 10th meeting. So these are the issues that were noted for review by the TAC at their May 10th meeting. And these are items that were addressed in our response dated June 24th back to TAC. And as Attorney Panos mentioned, looked at several issues, including delivery and visitor parking, the dedication of parking spaces on site, coordination of site distance, triangles with the landscaping design, information regarding the perfect fit parking document and its application to the site, discussion of neighborhood no parking signs on adjacent roads and private ways, on-site vehicle circulation, complete with auto turn analyses, and also the response to questions about the crosswalk over Nahant Street at the Traverse Street intersection. So the first issue related to delivery and visitor parking, and I'll jump to the site plan in a second, but there were questions about where vehicles and certain activities would take place. We had proposed that there's 4 spaces along the west side of the building. We're proposing that moving trucks can park in those 4 parallel spaces. Parcel and mail delivery can also be accommodated in those spaces, in the two southernmost spaces along that driveway. I'm just going to jump to the site plan for a second. So these are the spaces that are in question. There's 4 20-foot spaces in this area. The southernmost spaces that could be used for package delivery are in this area. The mail room is in this general vicinity, so that's the shortest walk to get the materials delivered. A second area for short-term deliveries is in the 3 parallel spaces off on the east side of the building.
Scott, could I get you to blow that up a little bit?
Sure.
Much better.
Okay. So the three spaces are in this area, right opposite the lobby. We expect that for things like Uber pickups, Uber Eats, these are the right locations for for those activities to take place. We're proposing that there'll be wayfinding signs located at the driveways for trucks to enter the west driveway. Probably post them at the east driveway as well. There's better visibility in this area for in the case of pedestrians walking back and forth between the Uber vehicles and the lobby. So we anticipate this is a better location for them for that activity to take place. There's also there was a comment about visitor spaces. There's 6 visitor spaces that have been dedicated in this area. We think that this is a good location for the visitor spaces because obviously we want to maintain the closest spaces for the residents, as they'll be the ones that are going to use those most frequently. In terms of the building entrances, there's no building entrances on Nahant Street, which could lend itself to if a Uber or a Lyft driver is picking up or dropping off, if the building entrance is in the front of the building, that would encourage that kind of drop-off behavior to occur out on the street. But since the building entrance points, and the lobby in particular, is over in this area, it really encourages those types of deliveries or drop-off pickup activities to occur on site and away from Nahant Street. And just to further justify or enforce that behavior, the applicant's willing to, with the town's permission, install no parking signs along the front of Nahant. It should be clear that there's no parking on Nahant Street, but this would just be a way to reinforce that. Let me back up a little bit.
And Scott, on the west driveway, were those few spaces there for moving trucks? Did I read that right before?
Yes.
Could they potentially be used for delivery drivers as well?
They could be, yes. Yep.
And possibly an ambulance or a fire engine could park there, although where's the entrance? The only entrance is on the other side? Or is there a second?
No, I believe there's another entrance right in this area.
Okay. All right, just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Yep. Right, so back out here. Right, so the last comment that I think was, well, hang on. Right, so the last comment that I wanted to touch on was that there have been concern about stormwater runoff from the existing site that currently goes out to Nahant Street. There were concerns about that. Scott Cameron can get into more detail on that if needed, but in general, the way the site is being designed, all the existing runoff on site or drainage on site will be captured on site, so there won't be any runoff onto Nahant Street once the development is constructed. The plan is to, again, retain all that drainage on site.
And if I may just jump in very quickly, that came up in the context of a safety issue in freezing. The idea or concern expressed was there'd be more runoff generated from the site that would freeze along the sidewalk in Nahant Street, and we want to address that head on, and Scott can speak to it much much more clearly, that is not going to happen. As Scott Thornton indicated, all runoff is being handled on site. And we make the condition better, not worse, certainly the existing condition. Thank you.
Yeah. So then, discussion of the parking spaces on site. I believe there had been some discussion from the TAC about dedication of spaces within the garage and in the tandem area in order to minimize the potential for kind of hunting around for parking spaces. We think that's a great idea. And so what we're proposing, again, it's the spaces in the garage, the northern garage accessed from the driveway, from the connection to the east driveway, and the lower garage. These garages are not connected, but the lower garage is accessed through a connection to the south, and there will be posted signs there'll be do not enter signs posted in the area where the west driveway comes into the south part of the parking area. But again, these tandem spaces are proposed to be reserved for residents with more than one car or in the 2 and 3 bedroom units. Similarly, the spaces, as I mentioned, in the garages would be dedicated. We expect that they'll be more coveted for weather protection than the surface spaces. So those will be reserved for specific users to minimize that kind of hunting around for a parking spot. And then we have 4 EV spaces that are located. I believe they're located in this area at a location closest to Nahant Street. We thought that had been a common theme that the fire department had raised with the EV chargers. They wanted to have easy access to those spaces and not have them in the garage in the event of a fire of one of the vehicles, that they could get to that vehicle quickly. So that's the proposal for the EV spaces. Oh. Okay, so we went through these. Again, so as far as the site distance coordination with the landscaping design, admittedly, the site distance was addressed, but the landscaping design needed to be tweaked a little bit to account for the site distance. We previously had a vinyl fence that went out past the edge of where a vehicle would need to see for the site distance, looking to the right. That has been pulled back, and landscaping has also been pulled back away from the edge of that fence. And I don't know if you recall, but the landscaping in the front of the building had been pretty dense. Number of trees and shrubs proposed right up along the back of the sidewalk. That has been cleaned up a little bit, I guess, or less de-densified, if you will, so that there's more visibility for a vehicle looking through the proposed vegetation. And this is what I'm talking about. In this area, we wanted to try to minimize the landscaping so that it's less restrictive to a vehicle that was looking to turn either left or right out of the site. Next issue was the perfect fit parking application. And there's a lot of information here, but basically what we wanted to show was that the perfect fit parking report as a pretty substantial database, initially looking at 200 developments. Up to the latest phase, they've looked at 211 complexes. Parking in general was provided at a rate of between 0.25 and 2 spaces per unit, with an average of one space per unit, but only 70% of those spaces were full when surveyed. And in affordable housing developments, the parking rate was observed to be even lower at only 0.55 cars parked per unit. Through the latest phase, which goes to locations further away from Boston, looking at Needham, Newton, Sudbury, and Waltham, 211 apartment complexes have been studied with an average demand of 0.75 spaces per unit. In fact, those 4 towns have actually got a rate of under 1 space per unit, and that's based on the surveys done at night for peak demand period for residential developments, and showing a demand ratio of 0.9 spaces per unit. You know, and the perfect fit parking reports conclude that most developments were overparked and resulted in an excess supply of parking. And one thing they noted was that the single largest factor that was associated with parking demand was the parking supply. So it's kind of, if you build it, they will come and they will bring their cars. So secondarily to that was access to jobs and deed restricted affordable housing. But you know, the surplus of supply is caused from excessive parking requirements, and the study recommends in general that municipalities reconsider their residential parking standards. The next issue had to do with no parking signs. Parking on side streets for residents are allowed in the existing conditions. And this, you know, we still think that the development is going to have sufficient parking supply for the residents, the guests, and visitors, and there will not need to be any parking off-site. I know we had made this point previously that we don't object to any installation of no parking signs on adjacent streets if the town is willing to do that or feels the need to do that. There was some discussion about Wilson Road, how it was a private street, but there were still people parking on there that were not residents. You know, if it is a private street, then no one who lives on Wilson Road has a right to park there. And Attorney Panos has offered to assist the residents on Wilson Road to install no parking signs if it is a private street.
Scott, I just want to touch on this one just while it's fresh in my mind, because I'll probably forget. But as far as the no parking signs, I think it might have been a little bit misunderstood. The point that we were trying to make with having the developer install no parking signs is that now it would restrict the ability for neighboring streets to have the occasional on-street parking space. And I think that's what we see right now. And I think that's an unfair ask to basically say that our development might cause some on-street parking in your neighborhood. So to curtail that, you now won't be able to park in front of your own house to drop off groceries or, you know, have a visiting nurse or whatever it is. I mean, we don't see a lot of on-street parking, but they've had that ability. And I think that the concern is with 100 units, if the parking supply, for whatever reason, even though I know we're talking about the perfect fit study, and you know, you seem pretty confident that it will handle the supply of visitor parking, but if it doesn't, they really don't have any place on Nahant Street to go, so they're going to go to small, narrow side streets that you know, right now don't see a lot of on-street parking, but they are able to enjoy the ability to have, you know, some cars parked in front of their house on occasion. This has the potential to increase that burden, but I also don't think it's fair to ask the residents to bear the burden of never being able to park in front of their house on a side street because of a development that's, 2 streets over. It just, it's not a fair ask of them, to give that up. And it's also not a fair ask of them to, potentially have to bear the burden of a very clogged, narrow street either, if the parking supply doesn't meet the demand. And I get what you say with the perfect fit study. I'm just saying if it doesn't, like I think it won't, that would be an issue, and they would have to deal with that. So either way, it just, to me, it doesn't work. And then as far as the Wilson Road parking goes, that's great that the developer wants to put up no parking signs, but since it's a private way, now who's going to police that? And since it's a private way, they're as residents of that street, they would have to be responsible for getting that vehicle towed and deal with all that. Because we as a police, unless it's on a private way, unless it's blocking a handicap space unlawfully, a fire lane or a fire hydrant, we are not towing vehicles from a private way. Same as it would be at the Stop and Shop parking lot. If we get called there for someone blocking the fire lane, we can tow it. But if they have a no parking sign, we're not enforcing that. We're not enforcing private ways, no parking spaces, and towing vehicles from private ways. So now, again, the residents of Wilson Road are going to have to deal with trying to enforce that, and I just don't think it's enforceable.
If I may jump in, Jason Panos again, 2 issues that emerged, and I'll take the easiest one first. I think the issue of Wilson Road, we would propose residents only parking, and the concern you have, Lieutenant Anderson, is an enforceable right of Wilson Road residents today, whether there's a sign there or not. They have the right, if that's a private road, to have non-residents towed, whether there's a sign or not. It's private property. It belongs to each adjacent property owner, and we're not doing anything that, or suggesting anything that changes any rights they don't already have. With regard to the no parking or no overnight parking or any parking restrictions on adjacent ways, we're not asking the town to do this. We're suggesting that if the town wants to undertake an initiative to control parking on those adjacent ways, that we would be open to a discussion to assist you in that. We're not asking you to put parking signs, no parking signs there, where it was noted as a pre-existing condition. And we're here to assist if the town wants to, as I said, undertake that initiative. We certainly don't want to inconvenience local residents, and we certainly wouldn't want to take away rights or suggest taking away rights they already have. This came up a couple of meetings ago, as you recall, and there was a misconception. At the beginning, we thought that this was illegal parking. The TAC generally corrected us on that, and all we are saying is we're here to assist. That's all. We're not asking you to do this.
Nope, duly noted. I just want to make sure that we were clear
Okay.
on that end, because in
Yep.
the comments, it kind of it's easy to flush out in a meeting. So, and as far as the Wilson Road issue is concerned, you're 100% right. They have the right to do that on their street and to be able to park on that private way and to restrict that. I just my question is who enforces it, and
It's a private way, and they would enforce it just like they have the right to do now. And if it is a problem, and they've identified that as a problem of spillover parking on their private right way, today they have the right to hire a tow company and have those cars towed.
100%, but right now, to my knowledge, they've never had to do that, and I think their concern through their testimony at the TAC meetings over the last few meetings has been that that spillover parking that isn't there right now could be caused by 100 units. So I'm reiterating what their concerns are, and I think they're valid concerns.
All right. Thank you for hearing me.
Great, thank you. Next issue had to do with circulation on site. So we ran auto turn exhibits and analyses depicting the paths of trash delivery, moving trucks, emergency vehicles, and passenger vehicles. Ran that through the site layout. Again, trucks are proposed to enter the development at the west driveway and exit from the east driveway. Passenger vehicles can enter from either driveway, and then circulate out through the east driveway. This is the fire truck auto turn analysis. It shows we showed the fire truck entering from either driveway. We also showed them exiting either driveway, realizing that if they were to come in from, most likely they'd be coming in from the west, but if for some reason they came in from the east, they could come through, circulate to the back. Again, there's room for trucks to pass each other in the back if need be. And then we assumed if that truck needed to exit out through the west driveway, it would be possible for them to do that. This is for the fire truck. We have an analysis of the passenger vehicle. There's no issue with them coming in from the west driveway, from the east driveway. We wanted to show how they would come in. If they wanted to turn around, they could do so using the entrance to the garage. Garbage trucks entering the west driveway, come down, park near the building. The trash room is located in this area, so dumpsters would be wheeled out, picked up by the trash vehicle using the combination of the sidewalk to the driveway, and then the vehicle could exit out. And then we've got the moving trucks pulling into this area, which again we think is going to need to be actively managed by the property manager, so we don't have too many vehicles there at the same time. And then they would unload materials and then exit back out through the east driveway. And yeah, I think the last issue had to do with a concern of pedestrians being able to cross Nahant Street. The existing crosswalk at Traverse Street is faded. The wheelchair ramps are probably not compliant with ADA. And the applicant has agreed to install a push button flasher, RRFB rectangular rapid flashing beacon, for the purpose of assisting pedestrians to cross at this existing crosswalk. We're rebuilding the wheelchair ramps there, and then again the push button activated flasher would be installed according to the ADA regulations. I think it's within 4 feet or 3 feet of the actual ramp, and it would be consistent with the current regulations for APS devices. And this is something that the applicant has agreed to install for obviously not just for the residents' use, but for the public's use, in order to cross Nahant Street with some assistance with the RRFB, with the flashing strobe lights that get people's attention for sure for when they're traveling on Nahant Street. That concludes my presentation. I'll be available for any questions, Lieutenant.
Scott, if a vehicle was exiting the west driveway, which I know it has a one-way circulation there, but what is the ISD to the left, looking left? So let's say, fire engine or wrong way drive or whatever, they were exiting left. What's Do you have that available?
We looked at it a while ago. I don't have that number in front of me. If the fire truck was exiting, their vantage point is over 6 feet above the pavement, so that
Yeah, we would
typically
have a different,
assists.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's a different criteria than for passenger cars.
I think my concern, and then I'm going to open up to members of TAC, but just since we're on this slide, fresh in my mind. Let's say, there's an ambulance loading a patient in over by the, the delivery space side on the east side, and there's a police cruiser there. There's just some routine activity that kind of clogs up that two-way east driveway. Your Uber Eats driver, your inpatient 18-year-old driver, whatever you fill in, whatever type of scenario you want there, might go out that wrong way. And I'm curious what that intersection looks like as far as sight distance there. I don't recall exactly what it was, but I think it was poor enough that,
I have it up, Joe.
yeah, that it was shifted to the east driveway.
Yeah, in the original study, the sight distance for the west driveway was recommended 320 feet looking to the west, 290 looking to the east, and the field measurement was 435 looking east and 164 looking to the west.
Okay.
Yeah,
think
and
yeah.
that's part of why we shifted the access configuration and had the exiting vehicles on the east side.
Gotcha. Okay. Bill, do you want to start off and then we'll move through?
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of focus on the same piece with the intersection site distance. I mean, Scott, if you jump back to the one that showed the ISD with the little yellow triangle piece, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, we're looking at a section for one of the exits, or the only exit here, right, for the site that has 160 feet. Where if you reconfigured the site, like I don't look at this in this project as, we can only look at the two driveway locations. You can easily make this work and have the proper intersection site distance if the existing driveway was used as the driveway for the project. I mean, I get that you want to maximize this building to the nth degree, but you definitely have an ability to solve this potential safety problem that we've highlighted a couple of times. Obviously, it's not just you, it's the team, as the design team. I mean, this is very solvable. And it to me just doesn't seem to jive. I said when I was on the ZBA meeting, I don't like the location of the trash truck because you're in the one way drive aisle. At least it would need to go to the other drive aisle so that people can get around it. I don't like the configuration of how you have half of your folks entering where potential fire trucks will be blocked. You would have a trash truck that's going to block it that we know is going to happen. If there's a chance for any of the deliveries to happen in that location where you're planning it, people still can't get around. I mean, all of those, to me, you're kind of designing into pinch points and into problems based on a fixed building that you, or I should say, a building that you folks are assuming is fixed, which shouldn't be. And these things need to be addressed. I mean, we've gone back and forth, whether the building's too big for the site. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody probably thinks it is. But from a safety standpoint, you can design these things to fix these problems. And we just keep getting the same plan back with no substantive changes. And that's kind of where I'm at. And, I think I've been fairly consistent on intersection site distance for all the times that you've come before the TAC. I just think this has to be overhauled. I really do.
Yeah, I see your concern. I think that we're working with the site and the driveways. We're looking at the stopping site distance as the main criteria, right? The intersection site distance is what's desirable, and we'd like to have we would all like to have all the desirable comments and engineering criteria met, but the main one that needs to be met is the stopping sight distance. And for the vehicles that are exiting the driveway, exiting the site, we have that at the east driveway. We don't have it at the west driveway, so that's why we propose to make that an entrance only. I understand that there may be some, because there's always something that can happen that would cause motorists or people to deviate from what they would otherwise do. But I think the issue with the trash truck, I don't think it takes a long time to empty the trash from these dumpsters. It's a 100-unit development. They're not going to be, it's not like they'll be out there for 5 minutes occupying that driveway. So I think where the site has the trash room, I think it makes sense to have the trash trucks come in that way and have the refuse dumped in that manner. There's enough room for bypass to occur on the east side. And I think it can probably, I don't have the exact width of the driveway on the west side here. But I do believe there's an opportunity for vehicles to bypass each other if they're temporarily stopped. So I think that I do appreciate your concerns, and this is we think that this access works for the project.
I mean, I think, again, you can maximize the site distance on the site by redesigning the site and keeping essentially the existing driveway, the main driveway to the site that you have. I mean, it's clear to me you're pushing these to the ends, which are causing the site distance issues that we're talking about. And we're consistent on intersection site distance as a traffic advisory committee. We've been very clear on that on all the projects that you bring before us. So, from my perspective, this needs an overhaul. We really need to be looking at some type of redesign that will maximize this from a safety standpoint. And this plan that I'm looking at right now doesn't do that.
Bill,
That's all I got, Joe.
okay, thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I just want to keep going on site distance for a second. Like Bill said, I've been consistent on intersection site distance on all development projects. I understand that oftentimes it can't be met, and you want to say that the stopping site distance is what's critical, and if you meet the stopping site distance, that's the minimum. But just to clarify, that's the minimum to avoid a collision. So anyone who's traveling at that speed has to slow down to avoid a collision at the site driveway. The point I want to make is that it's based on the 85th percentile speed, which is 26 miles an hour heading westbound. If there's somebody that's going 29 miles per hour, the SSD is not adequate. And even from the speed study, we can see that there are hundreds and hundreds of vehicles that are traveling over 29 miles an hour. So there's going to be the potential for collision, for any vehicles that are traveling 29 miles per hour or greater. That's just something I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah, I think that to the extent that that we can maximize the site distance that's there, we've done that, and I think it addresses most of the vehicles and the speed ranges that we've seen. We looked at as you mentioned, the 85th percentile, and there's sufficient distance for vehicles to come to a stop traveling at that speed coming from the east.
I don't disagree with you there, Scott. It's just that when it creeps up to 29 miles an hour, the SSD has to be 190. So anyone who's 190 feet away traveling 29 miles an hour could collide with somebody coming out of that driveway in its current location.
Right, but the 85th percentile was for traffic moving westbound, and That was the 26. So we meet that 26. We've got over 400 look for vehicles coming from the east. That's where the higher speed was observed. That's where the 29 was observed.
No, I know.
I know what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
I get your point.
The person exiting the driveway can't see somebody until they're 180 feet away, 185, whatever's on the graphic here.
Yeah, it's 180 on the graphic, but so we're designing to the, we can't. I mean, if we were designing to, I understand your point. If we were designing to, we'd like to design to the 90th percentile or the 95th percentile, but there has to be some kind of breaking point or knee to the curve that gets reviewed. It's the 85th percentile that's used for design, and we meet that.
Yeah, and I get that, but I think I'm just gonna make the point again that it's a frequent occurrence for vehicles to be traveling 29 miles an hour or greater heading westbound based on the speed study data that you provided. The reason, and just to reiterate Bill's point, the reason the driveway is where it is because of the building. So we're just expressing that the driveway in that location is not safe enough in our opinion.
Matt, anything else before I continue?
One minor clarification just on the site circulation. I wasn't necessarily focused too much on the auto turn and whether or not vehicles could reverse direction. It's just the fact that that's your permanent condition, is that someone coming into that driveway and driving to the back of the building, if they don't find a space, they have to turn around. I think it's just an undesirable permanent condition. I appreciate that they can make the 3-point turn and turn around, but for everyday living, that's kind of undesirable in my opinion.
Right. So I think this graphic was specifically prepared because there was a comment that said what happens when people come around from the east driveway and need to turn around. So that's why. I mean, I would think most people. Yep. I would think most people would come in from the west side or the west driveway, and they have the more spaces that are available for them. So
right, but if someone comes in from both directions, they meet at the bottom of that driveway there, and one of them has to turn around.
Yep, but there's sufficient room. I mean,
no, I get it. It's just not ideal. I'm not saying it's it's not that they can't do it. It's just some undesirable interaction. That's all.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify my point from last meeting.
Hey, Mr. Mayo, do you have anything for us? I'm just going to go through the members and.
Sorry, I'd like to hear from, I think I saw Deputy or Provisional Chief Purcell on. Because I think what Matt mentioned about the cars, the fire engine scares the hell out of me turning around there if that was ever going to happen. So I saw Deputy on. I hope he still is.
Chief,
I just don't see it.
If you're on with us still.
Yeah.
You hear me?
We have you. Yep.
Yeah, I've been listening. I'm here. Yeah, it's to concur with the engineer. The sight lines, I'd love to have the building be pushed back a little bit because it gives us more room to operate in the street, and ladders from the front. It's very tight. You can never tell till these things are laid out what it really looks like. I do like the fact that we can get around the building. 90% of the new buildings don't allow access to 3 sides of the building, but it's not desirable. It's too tight. We're going to get hung up in there. It is what it is. I can already tell you that by looking at it. We certainly can't turn around, or any hammerhead turnaround won't work, but
right.
That's okay. It's just tight. It's very tight. For the ladder truck. Everybody does the schematic. They lay it out with the size of our apparatus. Turning in west or east from the Hahn Street. We'll be into oncoming traffic trying to swing these things in there, no question. We'll get hung up with the ambulance. We keep our apparatus in the street as much as we can, unless we go to fireground operations, and then we're gonna run into the parking issues, the people that are parking, you know, within the complex, things like that. It's not perfect. We always make it work, but it's definitely an issue all the way around. Anyway, that's all I got. You can never quite tell till, you know, the pavement is on the ground with these things, and by then it's too late.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Lieutenant, if I can just add one thing. I've been lucky enough to sit on this committee since 2008. I think maybe Dan has beat me with time of service on it. Excuse me. And I've never had a petition in front of us that made me feel unsafe, and has all the experts from our town engineer, police and fire, traffic advisor, feeling that this is unsafe. And I think that our town engineer said it best. It's all designed around a building that's too big. So I just think it's an unsafe project. I don't like the sight lines. And for those of us who have lived in this town a long time, like I have, 60 years, and I see a lot of people on this call tonight, and I know what the traffic study showed, but I bet they're all going to say that a lot of people, hundreds and hundreds of cars a day, travel much faster than the 85 percentile. So that's a real concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan and Lois Benjamin, do you have anything for us?
I was wondering, as far as the sight distance speed, you're talking 29 miles an hour. What would be the speed of an ambulance, a fire truck, a police car traveling in front of that building, responding to a call with its lights on? What would be the speed?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a question for me or for the chief, but the ones that I've seen typically, you know, they're not really speeding when they're getting close to a site. But that's just my perspective.
I
From
think
the fire department standpoint, we go the speed limit at all times or slower.
Okay. I was thinking that they could have something like they have at some of the intersections, that white strobe light, that if anybody is coming out of that building, that strobe would be on, saying there's somebody coming up in front.
I'm not sure that we've recommended that before or that I've seen it in town. Again, I think, you know, I can appreciate some of the creativity that we've heard for this development, but I go back to the fact that if we need to be that creative and think that far outside the box, then maybe it doesn't work, right? That's my concern. But I definitely get your point, though, Dan. It's
Yeah, I think we have the strobe light at the barber shop there at the junction coming out. Anybody that's the garage door opens.
Oh, for the garage door, sure. Yeah.
At the YMCA back the same way. That when that garage door opens, a strobe comes on.
Correct. Yeah, we do. We have that in town, but more for pedestrian warnings for the sidewalk where the frontage is limited. Yeah, correct. We do have that. But I think to your point, if there's a vehicle traveling 40 miles an hour, right, which isn't really, I can tell you from experience, running radar on the Hot Street, it's not only is it not outside the realm of possibility, it's a frequent occurrence there. And from our serious crashes, we've seen them well over 40 miles an hour, which is how they've split telephone poles in half and trees and bent guardrails so many times. I think the DPW can't keep up with replacing the guardrails there. It's the site stopping distance would be, it would need quite a bit more, and we're not talking about speeds that are unrealistic, like 60-mile-an-hour speeds. And if you just bump it up to 40 miles an hour, which I think is a frequent occurrence, you would have a serious issue there with being able to stop in time for a vehicle that was exiting from either driveway. Especially, you know, if there's queuing or some type of an issue that clogs up that east driveway, I guarantee you people are gonna just back out of the spot and get sick of waiting and go out that wrong driveway. It's the flow, and it may not be a regular occurrence, but I think it could happen enough just because the flow, it's not there. It doesn't have a good flow, and I can appreciate the efforts the development team have made to try to show us that it can work. And I'm not doubting, like Matt Keeley said, that yeah, you can probably make a 3-point turn there, but there's conflict points there that shouldn't exist. The flow is trying to make it work around a building that's a little too big for the site and definitely too big for the neighborhood. And yeah, these things might not be an hourly occurrence, but I can see them happening with regularity. And with the concerns of the engineers and the study that's been presented to us, those numbers they just don't jive for me. They create what I feel is an unsafe condition on a road that's already a concern to the residents. And and I take a lot of issue with some of the comments that came back from the development team that we haven't provided any evidence. Our job at TAC isn't to provide evidence that this doesn't work. Our job is to review your proposed development, and your job is to tell us that it's safe and it meets the industry standards. And our job is to listen to members of the public and to hear their firsthand account, which in my opinion is evidence. This is not a board, it's a committee, but in my opinion, their testimony as residents is evidence. I believe that my testimony as a police lieutenant in charge of traffic, being a police officer for 2 decades, is evidence. I believe that the crash history is evidence. I believe that, much of what we've heard and even presented by the development team in terms of the traffic impact assessment is evidence. It's evidence that there are some serious issues here, and we're concerned as a committee. Now, what the Zoning Board of Appeals does with that, I'm not really sure. But my job as the chair of the TAC, and I think every member here, is to raise these concerns, to try to flush out what's probable, what's possible, what's unlikely, and what the concerns of the residents are. And I think their concerns go far beyond, we just don't want a big building near our house. I've heard a lot of concerns that quite frankly hold a lot of water for some safety issues and for some undue impact on the neighborhood that I think just isn't fair to them. So I think there's a lot of issues here, and to say that we haven't provided evidence, I believe that our residents have provided a ton of evidence. I believe that your own traffic impact assessment has provided evidence against the safety of this project. And I believe that the questions that we've raised have been quite a bit of evidence that there are concerns here. And we can go back and forth about what industry standards are and what they're not, but at the end of the day, our job as a committee is to look at this through the lens of common sense and firsthand experience. That's why we have subject matter experts. That's why we have resident members on the committee. We have Disability Commission representative position. We have police, fire, DPW, engineering. Try to look at this holistically and say, okay, that is what the industry standard says, but what is actual here as far as this site goes? Just like the perfect fit traffic study, I don't doubt that they've done quite a bit with that study, but I would say that this is not the perfect fit for Nahat Street. This isn't probably, if you were to look at the 200 plus developments that were part of that study, I don't think you would find a situation like Nahat Street. I think a lot of those developments are right by the commuter rail, right by rapid transit. They're near the highway. They're in areas that aren't as congested as Nahat Street, that don't have the geography that Nahat Street has, and all of the concerns that have been raised in front of our committee. So, I'm not doubting that, by and large, that study can be applied, and that a lot of parking spaces are left empty, 30% of them, or whatever it is. But this is just it's a unique situation. This is the first one since 2019, since I joined Traffic Advisory, that I don't feel comfortable with. We've had much larger developments. We've had smaller ones. We've had everything in between. There's a 400 plus development at the head of the lake on the Reading line that we looked at, and we flushed out a lot of these issues and concerns. And at the end of the day, it doesn't have to do with what we think about development or the size of it. There was a lot of pushback on the size of that development too, because it's large. But we looked at parking and traffic and safety the same way we're looking at this development, and it's just they're two different locations, and unfortunately, I don't believe that this one fits. But that's my take on it. I'll move on to John Connors. John, do you have anything for us?
Hi, Lieutenant. Just one quick comment. As a retired defensive driving instructor for FedEx, about 80% of our accidents as a company happen while backing. So to have a development like this where you're promoting, two vehicles meeting head to head, well, one of them can back up and do a 3-point turn. Yes, they can. But that's certainly not a safe situation to promote. So that's just another thing that I thought of when you were talking about the traffic flow around the building. It just promotes a dangerous situation.
John, I have a question, a FedEx question. This may be folklore or it could be true, but I remember hearing that UPS, FedEx, like their drivers are discouraged from taking left-hand turns. They try to keep the flow of their route so that they're not going across traffic and causing delays. Is there any truth to that?
Absolutely. They promote right turns. I believe UPS does it much more. To the point where they almost forbid left turns. FedEx not so much, because I think our routes are structured a little bit more separated, where UPS might be hitting almost every building on the street, and they can do that easier. But yes, that absolutely is a thing, and left turns certainly are discouraged.
And I can appreciate the efforts, and thanks, John. I can appreciate the efforts the development team has made to try to accommodate some of our concerns with the moving truck spaces, the signage, dedicated spaces for delivery vehicles and things like that. But I can picture off that east driveway, a UPS truck just parking there and them jogging across so they don't have to traverse that site to go all the way around. And I think even the most well-intended UPS driver who is under the gun that has to get those packages delivered by a certain time, and they have a certain time frame they have to do it in. Even the most well-intended that goes around that site once, and to Matt Healy and Bill Renault's point, encounters that queuing issue or that 3-point turn issue, and they're stuck there, and there's somebody taking their time trying to turn around. I think the next time they make that delivery on their route, they're not going to go all the way around that site. They're going to park on the Hunt Street, and they're going to jog it over and drop it off and jump right back in the truck. Amazon, UPS, FedEx, fill in the blank. I think that's likely. I don't think that's a possibility. I can see it. I've seen it throughout town. There's places I've seen it where it's dangerous, and there's other places where they can kind of get away with it. There's some roadway width there, so they can kind of sneak it off to the side of the road. But I see that happening. I think the flow of the site is going to discourage even the most well-intended delivery driver. They just have to encounter that once on their route, and they're going to know that address. They're going to be there probably every day with 100 units. Yeah. So thanks, John. Thanks for that. Joe Conway, do you have anything for us?
All set. Thank you.
Anybody that I missed from traffic advisory? Okay. Chief Scory, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, I'll keep my comments quick here, but I have about 15 years experience with TAC, both as the chair and then just listening in as chief. During that 15 years, we've had countless development projects like this in town. And with every project comes a traffic study, and every traffic study says the same thing. Minimal impact to traffic during peak hours, more parking than necessary, there won't be any overflow. And the truth is, that's never the truth. There is an impact on traffic. There is an impact on parking. I don't necessarily agree with the comments earlier that I don't think it should be a burden on the residents of the streets that surround this project to have to deal with overflow parking, which there will be. So all these other projects we looked at in the past, they were all in areas like Foundry Street, Salem Street, They were never in residential neighborhoods. I agree with all the comments. This project is far too big for this neighborhood. There will be significant impact to traffic. There will be significant impact to overflow parking, regardless of what the traffic study says. And I don't think it's fair to the residents of, say, Traverse Street, Hart Street, Coolidge, Harding, and all those streets to have to bear the burden of dealing with cars parked in their private ways that don't belong there.
All right, thank you, Chief. Anybody else from traffic advisory before I open it up to members of the public for public comment? Okay, I know there's a lot of interest in this this agenda item, so if you could raise your hand, and I'm going to keep it to 3 minutes, and I'm going to kind of hold you to it. I know I sometimes let you go a little bit beyond the 3 minutes, but in the interest of letting everybody be able to speak, I'm going to try to stick to that. So if you could identify yourself by name and address, and I'll start with Paula. Paula, good morning.
Hi. Hi. So I'm at 10 Wilson Road, and I've been there for almost 60 years. And let me start by saying there has never in 60 years' time been a car parked in front of my house. Never has it occurred, not even my own guest. So any cars that are coming to that area, I'm going to assume are a direct result of that building that's being put next door. So that we have no problem at all right now on Harding, Wilson, or Coolidge with any overflow traffic at all. I would never, ever dream of having to call anybody to tow anybody. That's number one. Number two, all the things associated with this monstrosity are based on a perfect scenario. Well, if this happens, we can do this. And this is what we have. We've got exact numbers right down to the T. When in this world is anything perfect? Can anybody tell me, when do we live in a perfect world? Never. Nobody is ever going to follow those signs. I'm just going to tell you, I've been there all my life. They're going to simply ignore them. Lieutenant, I'm going to be honest with you. I speed on the Hard Street, and I'm a resident. I speed on it. So these random people that come through, that are cutting across, that's the bridgeway. They're going to be speeding. They're not going to be going 20 miles an hour, 29. They're in a rush. We've been waiting. We've been stuck at those intersections all this time. We got to get to work. We got to get where we're going. The signs will be ignored. They will be ignored. And then lastly, I'm just going to say everything is at a bare minimum. We've got the bare minimum for parking. We've got the bare minimum for safety. We've got the bare minimum not to bring up water, but all of it, trash, everything. The building is too large, Mr. Panos. It's too large. Tell Jason, your client, it's too large. The town got rid of this proposal years ago for 28 units. You're asking for 100 now. If this wasn't 40B, it wouldn't even be on the agenda. Stop being so greedy. Cut the thing in half. The minimum, cut it in half, I beg you. As a resident of Wakefield, not even a resident in that neighborhood, as a resident of the town, I'm begging you to cut this monster in half at a minimum. That's it. Thank you.
You bring up a couple of points too that I wanted to mention, and I forgot to, because there's just so much with this development to consider. But the intersection of Main, North Ave, Nahant, it's already at a level of service of what, D, Matt? I think it was at a D, and it's you know, adding 100 units with even one car or, you know, point whatever vehicles per unit, it's gonna push that toward an F. It's gonna push that intersection toward failing, and there's another issue that I have with it. So if we're going to talk about evidence, I think that's evidence there. That intersection is already at a D by your own traffic impact assessment, and I don't. Whether it's going to actually make it fail, it's certainly not going to help. It's certainly not going to help it get any better. That's for sure. You know, the other thing I was going to bring up too that I forgot was our first agenda item for traffic calming request was on Merriam Street. Merriam Street is it's a totally different street. It doesn't see nearly a fraction of the volume that Nahant Street does. Nahant Street is a busy cut through street that connects two corridors of Wakefield, and if we're seeing speeds of, 85th percentile, 34 miles an hour roughly on Merriam Street, just to avoid, when the train gates happen to come down, which isn't all the time. The commuter rail doesn't run like the Orange Line, it's every hour or two. If we're seeing those type of speeds there, I kind of question really the validity of the traffic study, and by that I mean just the timing, time of day, whether there was a lot of queuing at that intersection that kind of caused some speeds to be lower than actually reported. I'm not saying anyone fudged the numbers. I'm just saying there's certain times where the traffic study doesn't fully capture what is the actual condition there. And if we're seeing those speeds on Merriam Street, we're considering some traffic calming measures. You know for sure that with the volumes that Nahant Street sees compared to Merriam Street, not only is Nahant Street seeing the speed, but the volume just creates a recipe for disaster. It's just the probability is a lot higher that there's going to be a crash there. So I'll turn it over to Tom Lucy. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Lieutenant. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Tom Lucy from Elm Street, also a member of the ZBA. I think you guys have nailed a lot of the points that the Board of Zoning Appeals has tried to make. But I would add a couple points. Following up on Bill's point, you have a clean slate here. There's no reason to have this design that compromises the safety of the people on this neighborhood and in the town. They could design it very differently to make it safer. Secondly, on that perfect fit parking, I think Lieutenant Anderson, you had it right. I'll give you a concrete example because they cited that there's less parking on 40B and affordable housing. Go up and look on Hopkins Street after you go over the bridge up by Tarrant Lane. There's horrible parking out in the street there all the time. It requires the town's parking enforcement and police up there all the time. The fact that there's going to be 100 units here, I don't know what that perfect fit parking study was about, but it doesn't work in Wakefield. We're not Needham, we're not Newton. So that I did have a question on those garage spaces for the development team. Do you plan on charging for those spaces?
No. Jason Panos, no.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't want to belabor it, but I think you guys nailed it. The site circulation doesn't work. It's not safe. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Maria Oliveira, good morning.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Marie Oliveira, 216 Nahant Street. I'd like to just state some facts about this street and the traffic on this street. Because of the development of the new high school, we have kids that run track on Nahant Street, down Valley Street, instead of over at the high school, and they do it often. It's a 2-season sport. So I think that should be taken into consideration. Also, we have the town dump on our street, and I don't know if that's a mitigating factor here, but we have town trucks up and down all summer long, and in particular during the winter months with ice and snow and having to pick up sand and whatever else. Also on this street, and they're probably allowed by law, even though this is a no truck street, but we have Wakefield Municipal Gas, we have Verizon up and down, and I'm really concerned with that energy park that's going up over by the 2 high schools, that will have even more Wakefield and Municipal Gas trucks up and down. And also with the vocational school now having 600 more slots for students, I think you have to look at the project now and what detriments it will pose in the future. You know, we do all these 40Bs, and at the time they look great, but as time passes, things get a lot more complicated. You know, and the Voc School is making a point of having services for town people. So they're going to have a pool, they're going to perhaps have a skating rink, they're going to have some classes. So again, more traffic flow on this street. And I would like to reiterate that earlier this year, we had a car accident right down by Mount Pleasant, I think, where a truck hit a utility pole around, I don't know, 7 o'clock in the evening, and we actually lost power for 3 or 4 hours. So, so there are accidents that occur on this street. I wouldn't say often, but often enough. What else do I want to say? During rush hour, with oftentimes ways rerouting people for traffic purposes, people coming from Valley Street down to Farm Street, that can back up significantly as vehicles pull off Nahan Street and go on to Farm. And it's absolutely true going the other way after school. Traffic can, from Main Street, be backed up all the way to the old Franklin School. So I want to point that out.
All right,
And
Marie, we have to move on. I've given you a little over 3 minutes, but thank you very much. We
Okay,
appreciate it.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Victoria, good morning.
Good morning, Victoria Turner, 16 Wilson Road. So thank you to the committee because I think you're making all really valid points and I appreciate it. But one thing Paula said that I really focus on is nothing is ever perfect. And when I look at all those studies with the, perfect turn, whatever it is, one pickup truck that is parked poorly, that entire scenario falls apart. Then you have people who are going to be stuck in that parking lot. They're going to go the wrong way. It's just going to be a mess. And I really am scared. And I live on Wilson Road. My 2 options to exit my house onto Nahan Street are Coolidge or Harding. And when you're trying to turn from Coolidge, you cannot see up the hill, which is where this development will be. And turning left off of Coolidge is terrifying. I won't do it. And now you're going to add 100 units there with people trying to turn, coming in both directions. And you guys have talked about the sight lines and the safe stopping distance. I'm really scared of the accidents that are going to happen. Not the ones that may happen, the ones that will happen if this project is built the way it is. And the traffic study, I still do not believe is comprehensive enough to talk about the impact on all of the side streets. You have Valley Street, people are going to turn that way. You have coming into the intersection with the high school. We all know that intersection onto Farm Street is dangerous. People get hit, there are crashes. I just don't feel like we have looked at the impact to the surrounding streets as much as we should have. This project is insanely large. There is not an inch of room for error in any of the designs I have seen. And that's just foolishness. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Stonehams iPad, good morning.
Hi, Karen McMaster, 25 Nahan Street.
Morning, Karen.
Good morning. Again, everybody is just doing their job from the development team, but I just, even the visiting parking at 100 units and there's 6 or 7 visiting parking spaces, I just don't see it. I've done a little bit more research. I might be repeating myself, but on a yearly average, Amazon delivers 72 packages per person. Not going to get into statistics and the numbers. That's a lot of packages. Those people are not going to pull in there, look for the right spot to park. They're going to park across the street because there's not a curb there. They're going to pull there. They're going to run across. It's just, there's just so many things wrong with this project. I can't even imagine. The safety is just immense. I haven't even heard anything about, I hope you're going to landscape and take care and manage your properties, but I haven't heard where the landscapers are going to park. You can't say everybody's going to park in that moving van position because there's too many people that have to go in there and do things. So landscapers are gonna come there, and as we see on the Hunt Street now, landscapers just pull on the sidewalk and cause an immense amount of traffic, which I have been on top of as of late. So again, everything everybody said, I'm just gonna piggyback it, and I'm concerned about safety for pedestrians, bikers. A lot of the streets, and I'll end here, Valley Street, Coolidge, Stock Ave, all those streets, it's very hard to get out of them now. And a lot of them, when you're coming up out of Valley, you have to come up a hill. So that cuts off those people's time to get out. That's the same thing with the other areas in that neighborhood, with Coolidge and Wilson. It's on a hill. You have to like floor it to get out, and then you could do it too late. So again, they need to relook at this, and they need to cut it down. It's too big. It's for a place where you're not in a city, and you're asking too much of us, plain and simple. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Next we have AJAENA. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. This is Allison Jane at 21 Hart Street. I live right at the corner of Nahant and Hart. Right there, smack dab on the corner where I've seen multiple times people taking that corner from Nahant, taking that left, and they do it on two wheels. Often less than two wheels at a very high rate of speed. It's not going to change. I consider the bottleneck that's caused. I don't know why the whole town is not on this traffic study. This Nahant Street is such a pass through that you're going to have people constantly passing through. But now when the bottleneck happens, it's going to go Farm Street. It's going to go down Water Street. The bottleneck is going to be caused at the four corners there of Main. It's going to go up Broadway. The bottleneck is going to go all the way to Greenwood. It's going to go into the town center. Now, before it was nobody's coming with cars. Now it's 100 units. And now I heard someone say earlier, some people may have 2 cars, some people may have 3. There's a sign that's out there that says, welcome 100 more people to your commute. It's more like 3 and 4, and it's more like 1,000 people to your commute. It's not the street for this type of development. People would with open arms welcome a development that had beautiful townhouses. We're tired of the eyesore. It's been there for years. We asked for great development. Before 28 units, I never even knew that was a thing. Somebody said cut it in half. Honestly, I think cut it in half is even too big. We see dog walkers, people walking dogs constantly now. And again, this is the traffic study. I know we can't get into the schools, but this place is going to have people that have children. Where are these kids going to school? I don't think the Woodville School can handle them. Where are all those kids on Tarrant Lane going to school? I mean, traffic, overdevelopment, but what about our school system? What about these people are moving and they're not paying taxes? What about our taxes we're going to have to build another grammar school? We have to build a larger middle school, maybe a second middle school. And again, you're talking about all this stuff that's happening now. Somebody else mentioned a good point. There's no future. So somebody do a study of the future when the VOC is done, when the high school is done, when these children enroll in school, when these people have cars. I have 6 people in my house. We have 6 cars. I mean, people grow up, they get licenses. You need your cars to go places. It's just common sense to me. It cannot handle the street, the town, the water, the traffic, the garbage, everything. Somebody said it's going to take 5 minutes to pick up garbage for 100 people. It's not 100 people. It's 200 and 300 people. It's not going to take 5 minutes. What traffic man do you know that picks up traffic garbage for 100 people in 5 minutes? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, stop dumbing this thing down and let's get to reality. Thank you. It's just so frustrating. I'm at work right now. I've sat in a conference room for an hour and a half, and it just keeps happening and happening and happening. But people need to speak up, and more people need to get involved. Because, I mean, this is just going to be a town-wide, and this is before another development and another development and another development. We aren't Cambridge. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, final call for any public comment. I think we have everybody, but give one last call. Any additional comments from members of TAC? Great. Attorney Panos, I'll turn it over to you for closing comments.
Thanks, Lieutenant Anderson. I would just rest on the presentations and the materials that were provided. The bottom line is this development was and is designed to industry guidelines. It's designed according to the data we have available. I was a little taken aback by the comment that the role of the TAC is not to provide evidence and data. And I can tell you in my 20 plus years of experience in 40B that if I don't have data to rely on, then I can't incorporate it into project changes. It just doesn't work. The role of technical review is not to provide us with conjecture. Look, in 20 years, this is not the first time I've heard a project is too big, too dense, too tall. And that's all I've really heard, except for a substantive issue that ISD does not exceed the industry standards that have been provided. I don't know what to say, but to agree to disagree. We believe we do have a safe project, and we've put forward hard data and evidence to support that. Scott Thornton has worked with Scott Cameron to design this development in a manner in which this project is safe. And we could not, in good conscience, present a project that was not safe. Keep in mind, the development team ultimately is out to build a project, is out to build this development. And the success of the development depends on the people who rent and live there. Do you think for a moment that people are going to rent apartments in a development that is unsafe? No, the answer to that is no. So you're going to help us out a little bit, and you're going to have to give us hard data to support the conjecture you've put forth. With that, I would invite Scott Cameron and Scott Thornton to perhaps finish up through the chair, of course. But at least I rest on the data that you've been provided. And by the way, before I rest, the scope, I mean, twice now, the validity of the traffic study is called into question for the first time. Keep in mind, let's go back to the Wayback Machine. The scope of this traffic study was determined by this very committee. The intersections studied were determined by this very committee. Until now, the traffic study has never been called into validity until today. And you're going to have to give us a lot more than the conjecture you've put forward to help you address the issues that you are truly concerned about. But this project is safe. We are not going to present a project that is unsafe because we have to tenant it. We have to tenant it at the bottom line. And if we spend the $50 million it's going to cost to build this, and we can't fill the property with tenants, where's that? How good is that for anyone? So again, through the chair, I would invite Scott Cameron and Scott Thornton, our subject matter experts, to kind of wrap up.
I'm going to have Bill Renault in a second. He's had his hand raised patiently, and then I will turn it over to them. I will say that you hit the nail right on the head. We're going to have to agree to disagree. I think we have provided evidence to you. The scope wasn't called into question. We did help you with the scope of the traffic impact assessment. But from the beginning, I made it clear that the traffic counts as they relate to speed may have been skewed by traffic queuing and things caused by some of the intersections, just time of day and the time of year that the study was done. So I've been consistent with that. I'm not saying that anyone fudged the numbers or did anything with the traffic study, just sometimes it doesn't accurately represent the condition that's seen there throughout the year and throughout the day. So that's been something I've been consistent on. The scope, yes, we did, but I'm not talking about the scope. I'm talking about the numbers. There's no way we're seeing numbers of an 85th percentile speed of 34 miles an hour on Merriam Street, which is a little side street on the in the Greenwood section of town, and we're seeing speeds of in the 20s on Nahant Street. It's just it's not accurate, and my evidence is my testimony as a police officer conducting traffic enforcement there for years upon years, the chief's experience as chair of traffic advisory, and at the time a lieutenant in charge of traffic who also conducted speed enforcement on Nahant Street. That's the evidence that we're providing based on our own experience. That it just doesn't add up to what we experience. And it's not that Scott Thornton and his team did a poor traffic impact assessment. It's that sometimes, depending on when the study's done, it doesn't accurately reflect what we see as a town and as a police department. But I will turn it over to Bill for comments, and then we'll turn it over to Scott and Scott.
Well, I had 2 points, so you covered the first one. I mean, I think we were looking, if memory serves, the study was done in December, if memory serves, right? So, I mean, we highlighted that in 2 different meetings on this, right? So that's the first piece. Second piece is that you said that you're meeting the intersection sight distance. For the exiting lane, you are not meeting that on one of your directions. And the fact is, if you want a fact, is that you're actually making the exit worse than the current condition for the majority of the traffic that was leaving the site. So those are 2 facts for you, and you can use those to address. I figure out a way to address them because I'm expecting something coming back to the Traffic Advisory Committee that clarifies that and why it's acceptable to make both entrances and exits for this site worse from a safety standpoint. That would be the question that I would ask you to address for the next meeting.
Yeah, you know what, we've been going round and round on this for meetings, and it's been closed with that we haven't provided any evidence. I'm actually prepared to have Matt Cayley draft a memo based on all of the public comment, the comment from traffic advisory members, the evidence that has been presented during our meetings, and send that forward to the Zoning Board of Appeals to make their decision. I think we've belabored this development long enough. We've been consistent with the fact that we don't feel that it's safe. We're still exactly where we were before, with some changes to things like signage and some of those things. But overall, to Bill's point, we don't feel that it's safe, and was not seeing any substantial change that's changing that. Mr. Mayo,
I will make a motion to that effect, Lieutenant.
Okay, you know what? Why don't we have Scott and Scott close first?
I really don't want to hear from them. I think we've heard enough. That's my opinion.
All right. As the chair, I do appreciate that, but I will let them close.
Okay.
Scott and Scott, you can give us any closing comments.
Yeah, appreciate it, Lieutenant. So in terms of, that I'm not going to try to address all the comments, obviously, that have been made. But in terms of the speed measurements, that was collected east of Middlesex, so about a little, not quite half a mile away from the Main Street intersection and any queuing. So we think that that's a pretty free flow condition. In terms of that intersection with North Main and Nahant, you mentioned that it would go to level service F. This project and other projects that we included in background conditions did not change the operations there from level of service D with the project, level service D without the project. In terms of the FedEx or UPS drivers parking on Nahant, it's not a question of just parking there, jogging, to the front door. They would have to cross Nahant Street, then they would have to jog a minimum of 100 feet to get to a building entrance point. If they're coming to the lobby to drop stuff off, they would have to come closer to 150, 200 feet. So I do think that, you know, a lot of concerns are, you know, it's kind of a what if this, what if that, worst case, and maybe not realistic scenario that's being, that are being proposed or being asked for consideration. The stopping site distance, again, you know, what's met there is the minimum requirement, the stopping site distance. It's not required to be met for, you know, for the 95th percentile speed, for the 100th percentile speed, for every single vehicle that's traveling on there. If that was the case, we would not have any curves in roadways. We would not have any hills in roadways. There, you know, this is New England. These are the design conditions that we work with. We meet the 85th percentile speed for stopping site distance. That's the minimum requirement. I understand that there's a desire to maximize that. We would like to maximize that as well, but the driveway locations are where they are. You know, so I think that's a few things. I don't know if Scott Cameron, if you're interested in hearing from Scott on some of the site plan details at this point, but other than that, I think we're done. Thank you.
Great. Just to confirm, Scott Cameron, you're good?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Mr. Mayor, you had a motion? If you're still on with us.
Yes, I move that we send the memo to the Board of Appeals as stated by Lieutenant Anderson.
A second on that.
I'll second that.
Second by Dan Benjamin. I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Mayo.
Yes.
Bill Renaud.
Yes.
Joe Conway.
I abstain.
Okay, understood. Dan and Lois Benjamin.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Matt Keeley.
Yes.
John Connors.
Yes.
And yes from myself. So we will send a memo, Mr. Panos, to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we will send a copy to you as well. And we'll outline our comments, concerns in the last 3 meetings that we've had.
Mr. Chair, are you able to copy us to that memo real time?
Sure, we can
you.
do that. Okay, moving on to.
Ed Anderson,
Yes.
could I one thing? I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm an at-large member of this traffic advisory committee, but this is my neighborhood. This is my people. I've lived here for 75 years in the town of Wakefield. You're destroying a neighborhood. It's just too damn big, and it shouldn't be there. And it's out of character with the existing neighborhood, but it shouldn't be. And this will be on my mind if somebody gets hurt because of this project, and I call it a project, not a neighborhood. It will only be a neighborhood if that building is out of there.
Dan, I do agree with you. However, their position is that they wouldn't build it if it was unsafe because they wouldn't make any money. And apparently the validity of our police chief, our fire chief, myself, and our DPW and engineers isn't enough for them. You know, we're not saying no, that we don't think it's safe because we just don't want development. We don't think that this particular development is safe and fits the neighborhood, but they disagree. So I think that's one thing I can agree on with Attorney Panos is that we have to agree to disagree. They're trying to develop this project, and we're trying to keep our town safe. All right, item number 7, approval of the meeting minutes from June 14th, 2024. Do I have a motion on that?
I haven't had a chance to review them, unfortunately, Joe. So would it be possible maybe to table that till next meeting?
Yep, I agree with that completely. So we will table that to our next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, item number 8, matters not anticipated for the agenda. Does anybody have anything for traffic advisory? that we didn't- we
Just a
didn't
quick
have
heads, I got one small quick heads up for you folks. So I think I talked to you folks before that we're looking at a North Ave corridor study, trying to dovetail my work for the quad gates that will be done at Broadway. So we had a site walk with MBTA to talk about all the different gates and options and what they would like to see. So I'm advancing that kind of in the background, so you guys know that's happening. My consultant actually, as we've been on this meeting, has sent my first draft of some stuff. So if it's not the next meeting, probably the one after, I'll have something to present on some recommendations from those folks. So it's coming down the pipeline.
Awesome. Very good. What else do we have?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I like that one. All in favor?
Aye.
Coffee.
Have a great weekend, folks.
Thank you, everybody.
care.
Take care now.
Have a good weekend.
Bye now. Thanks, John.